Picture this, the vast sun-scorched wilderness of 7th century Persia. Two massive empires are on a collision course. On one side, you have the mighty Sasanian Empire, a true global superpower of its time. And on the other, a new rising force from the Arabian Peninsula. And they're driven by something, well, something a lot more powerful than just steel. This is the story of a battle that would literally change the map of the world. A clash not just of armies, but of entire worldviews. So before a single arrow was even knocked, the Muslim commander, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, stood before his troops, and he didn't give a speech about riches or personal glory. He talked about a promise, a conviction. This quote from the Quran, it set the entire tone for what was about to happen. It framed this whole conflict as a test of faith, of righteousness, of patience. It made one thing crystal clear: their most powerful weapon wasn't a sword, it was their belief. But the man who was tasked with leading this incredibly faithful army, well, he was facing a serious personal challenge, one that would force him to command his army from one of the most unusual positions in all of military history.
I mean, the resolve here is just unbelievable. Sa'd was suffering so badly from sciatica and boils that he couldn't even sit up, let alone ride a horse into battle. So what does he do? He has his men carry him to the very top of a fort that overlooked the entire battlefield. And from there, lying on his chest on a pillow, he watched the whole thing unfold, sending his commands down through a deputy. It was an incredibly daring, almost unbelievable way to lead an army into a fight for its life.
You know, before he sent his men into that storm, Sa'd's first big command wasn't tactical at all. It was spiritual. He ordered the entire army to recite Surah al-Anfal, a chapter from the Quran filled with lessons on struggle, on divine support, and how to conduct yourself in war. This was all about filling the soldiers with a sense of peace, of tranquility, to center them and remind them that their real strength came from a source much, much deeper than just military training.
So, as the sun rose on the first day of battle, the day of Armath, the Persians unleashed their secret weapon, their shock and awe, a terrifying force designed to absolutely shatter the will and the battle lines of any army that dared to stand in their way.
13 war elephants. And you have to understand, each one was like a living, breathing siege tower with thousands of warriors swarming around them. They just thundered across the battlefield. And the Muslim cavalry's horses, well, they'd never seen anything like it. They panicked. For a moment there, it looked like this single weapon was going to decide the entire battle, just sowing chaos and terror through the Muslim ranks.
But from his high vantage point, Sa'd saw the chaos and came up with his brilliant counter-move. He ordered a multi-pronged attack. First, he told his best archers, don't even aim for the elephants, aim for the men riding in the boxes on their backs. At the exact same time, he commanded his fastest, most agile soldiers to get around the sides of these beasts, get behind them, and cut the ropes holding those boxes in place. The whole idea was to neutralize the threat by literally knocking the fighters off their perch.
And it worked. The pressure on the Muslim army started to ease up as the elephant riders were taken out or just thrown to the ground. The battle raged on until sunset. It was a brutal, grinding, bloody day. And by nightfall, both exhausted armies pulled back. The Muslims had survived the elephant shock. They'd proven they wouldn't break, but this fight was far from over.
Day 2, known as Aghwath, was going to be completely different. Just as the fighting kicked off again, help arrived from Syria. And with that help came a commander whose mind was every bit as sharp as his sword.
al-Qa'qa ibn Amr. The man was a legend. I mean, they used to say that just the sound of his voice in an army was better than having 1,000 extra men. And as his forces got close to the battlefield, he immediately came up with a plan to make sure their arrival had the biggest psychological punch possible.
He took his 1,000-man vanguard and split them up into 100 tiny groups of 10. Then he told them to come over the horizon one group at a time. The goal was simple, but absolutely genius. Make the Persians think that a massive, unending river of reinforcements was pouring onto the battlefield.
So, just imagine you're a Persian soldier. You're exhausted from the day before. You look up and you see a small group of 10 horsemen appear on the horizon. Okay, you think, manageable.
But then, just as they join the fight, another 10 appear. And every single time a new group arrives, you hear this massive roar of Allahu Akbar, God is greater, erupt from the Muslim lines. You can feel their morale just surging.
And then another 10, and another, and another. For the Persian army, it must have felt like the entire world was descending on them. This constant, relentless wave completely demoralized them, while at the same time it pumped so much energy and resolve into the Muslim fighters.
But al-Qa'qa wasn't just about psychological tricks. His tactical brilliance didn't stop there. He saw how the Persians had used their elephants to terrify the Muslim horses, and he decided, okay, I'm going to turn that exact strategy right back on them.
Al-Qa'qa told his men to grab their camels, animals the Persian horses had never seen before, and make them look like monsters. They literally draped them in cloths, put these frightening masks on them, and then charged these bizarre-looking creatures straight at the Persian cavalry. The effect was instant. It was devastating. The Persian horses freaked out and fled, completely terrified by this strange, monstrous sight. And this right here, this perfectly captures the tactical story of this battle. On day one, the Persians used their technological advantage, their war elephants, to cause panic. On day two, the Muslims fought back, not with better technology, but with better ideas, with sheer ingenuity. They used their local knowledge and their creativity to completely flip the script. I mean, this one sentence from the historical record says it all, doesn't it? This creative, totally unconventional tactic of the disguised camels ended up being even more effective than the Persians' mighty war elephants. It was a total triumph of mind over might.
So you have to wonder, where did all of this incredible resilience and creativity come from? It didn't just pop up out of nowhere on the battlefield. The sources are pretty clear that it was forged long before the first spear was thrown, deep in the hearts and minds of these soldiers and their whole community.
This deep spiritual commitment was everywhere. Back in the camps, you had mothers, like the famous poet al-Khansa, urging their sons on, but not with calls for revenge or glory. They were reciting verses from the Quran, reminding them to be patient, to endure, to be pious. Faith wasn't just a warm-up exercise for battle. It was the very fuel for their inner strength.
And that really gets to the heart of it. The tactical genius we see at al-Qadisiyah wasn't just a few random clever ideas. It was a direct extension of a worldview that treated spiritual preparation as being just as important as material readiness. This created soldiers who weren't just brave, but who were also adaptable, creative, and incredibly resilient, even when the odds seemed impossible.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. The Battle of al-Qadisiyah shows us this powerful blend of faith and strategy, where brilliant tactics were born from a deep, powerful well of conviction. It really makes you wonder, when an army's greatest strength isn't its numbers or its weapons, but what it truly believes, what are the limits of what it can achieve?